Mr. Thompson. Our next speaker is Carol Prunhuber. She's a journalist born in Venezuela, and she's a well-known Venezuelan actress and an American father in 1956. She has written several books, and also she met Dr. Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou in 1991. And we have Mrs. Carol Prunhuber.
Thank you for your introduction. Just a little correction. I'm not the actress. My mother was. Thank you. She married an American. I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I think it's very important for us to get together and remember this day. And by this day, I mean July 13th. And July 13th is a very heartfelt and meaningful day for the Kurdish nation. It is a day in which the life of a much-loved and respected Kurdish leader was extinguished. We gather each year to remember Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou and his colleagues. This day commemorates the passing of a great light from this world. Now, why do we take the time to recall a past fallen hero? First and foremost, Ghassemlou was a man of very high principles, and commonly in the world of politics, he actually lived those principles. His ideas were so far ahead of his time that even within his party, he was greatly misunderstood. Ghassemlou came to his people with the vastness of the ocean and was often met with the limitations of a closed-in world. It is 22 years since that tragic day when Ghassemlou was struck down in Vienna. 22 years of sorrow and slow movement forward in Iranian Kurdistan. 22 years of impunity and complicity have also passed, during which justice has not been served. Ghassemlou was killed, but his assassins failed to destroy what he represented. His ideas of freedom and democracy continue to inspire the hearts of all those who lived with him. We must also speak about the 22 years of shame. Shame upon those who have allowed the murderers to flee and have kept silence to protect these wrongdoers. Our presence here today speaks to the silent and complicit Austrian authorities as well as the Islamic regime of Iran, saying, "We do not forget." Our voices join those of thousands in Iranian Kurdistan and around the world who on July 13th honor Ghassemlou, regardless of the threats of that criminal regime. We will continue to remind the world until justice is finally served. The steps that led up to this hideous crime are the historical events of the Kurdish nation and Ghassemlou's life. In looking more closely at Ghassemlou's political program, it's no surprise that he ended up being a target. His perspective was in direct opposition to the agenda of the Islamic Republic of Iran. From the moment he emerged as a political force, the plan he held for his country drew the ire of the regime. The murder of Ghassemlou was not only a tragedy for the Kurds of Iran, but also for the entire Kurdish nation. He was a far-sighted leader whose political program forged a democratic and humanistic vision for his people. Especially in those days, but also true today, his national ideal went beyond local tribal agendas. Ghassemlou was a harbinger of a real unity among the Kurds. He understood that the Kurds could only gain strength as a national movement if they were united. Such unification would put an end to the cycle of short-sighted victories and manipulation of the different regional governments. He took a higher road: freedom and democracy, minority rights, and justice were the cornerstone of Ghassemlou's vision. He said that it was of utmost importance to protect democratic freedoms and strengthen a proper democratic government in Iran. Without a democratic regime in Iran, the Kurds could not achieve their rights. And without securing the Kurds' rights and other nationalities in Iran, the regime could not be truly democratic. For Ghassemlou, democracy entailed three aspects that could not be divided. These included social, economic, and political democracy. Pluralism was another aspect that Ghassemlou supported. About this, he said, if one is a Democrat and believes in pluralism, then one must allow others to give their opinions. Ghassemlou firmly believed that the Kurds alone could not bring forth a democratic regime in Iran. Iran is a country with many nations. Therefore, it was and continues to be necessary to work with and fight with the other national groups for self-determination. We know this very well from the present-day realities. He thought that cooperation among the different national groups was paramount to bring about democracy in Iran. All nations have the right to choose their destiny. All men have the right to practice their religion. Even though Ghassemlou's wish was for unity, the tendency within the Kurdish parties is towards divisiveness. This is an aspect that does not seem to have changed. Personal differences and intolerance within the party ranks have been the cause for ongoing division among the Kurdish parties for generations. Even today, Kurds are still struggling to achieve an ongoing working dialogue with one another. Ghassemlou taught the Kurds to be proud of their identity and heritage. He realized that one of the keys to genuine social and political progress for Kurdistan was the quality of self-respect. You will learn to speak and write in Kurdish, he would tell his Peshmergas. 30 years ago, he embraced social democracy for his nation. To do this, he left behind the dogma of the radical left. Even though Ghassemlou's party led an imposed armed struggle against the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the PDKI was perhaps the only third world revolutionary movement that opposed popular terrorist methods, especially at that time. About this, he said, open quotes, as a democratic organization, we have always opposed all acts of terrorism, be it hijacking of planes, taking hostages, putting bombs, or any action that threatens the lives and security of civilians. To renounce our principles and thus lose our image as a responsible, democratic, and humanitarian party in return for fleeting publicity is both vain and useless. Close quotes. Throughout his 10 years as the leader of the Iranian Kurds following the 1979 revolution, Ghassemlou had always sought dialogue with the authorities. War, he said, had been imposed on the Kurds, who had no option but to resist and defend themselves. Yet, he believed the solution lay on the negotiation table. In 1988, the war between Iran and Iraq was over, and Ghassemlou and his party believed that if the regime in Iran was willing to sit down with the arch-enemy, Saddam Hussein, why not with the Kurds? At the same time, Ghassemlou feared that both governments in Tehran and Baghdad would agree to crush the Kurdish rebellion in their respective countries, as it had happened in 1975 after the Algiers Accord. So Tehran reached out to Ghassemlou through Jalal Talabani, current president of Iraq, proposing a dialogue with the PDKI. The party accepted it, and Ghassemlou traveled to Vienna to meet with the Iranian representatives in December 1988 and in January 1989. Talabani organized the first set of meetings under extreme security measures, which were supposed to continue in 1989. But the Iranians interrupted the dialogue. At the time, Talabani thought that the Iranians were abandoning the negotiations due to changes in the internal political situation in Iran. Khomeini's health was declining, and the fight for succession had intensified.